The backlash surrounding Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has already reached levels we haven't seen since probably Disney's Snow White. But now websites like Variety are trying to claim that we're all to blame. And actually, we have no moral legs to stand on. See this from Variety, and it's titled, "Why Elon Musk and his troll army's attacks aren't just silly, but wildly inaccurate." Also, like my previous video, I can't use Odyssey movie footage or I'll get copyrighted, so gameplay footage that feels appropriate will be used here instead. But Variety comes shooting out from the gate by saying this. From the team that brought you Why is Snow White Latino, Why are there black people in the Rings of Power, and Star Wars has gone woke, comes the latest online onslaught against an anticipated Hollywood project that committed the unfathomable sin of having a diverse cast. Variety then defends their stance as seen here by saying that the story is fictional to begin with, therefore diversity is a non-issue, because Helen of Troy can then be black, because again, it's an adaptation, which is wild to say. This is the same globalist-like propaganda nonsense we've been seeing for so long now, haven't we? The idea here is that these corporations, they want to normalize the idea of race-swapping white history and their stories to make these stories no longer be associated with white culture anymore. That is what it is. Remember, as seen here, where Netflix made the Anne Boleyn show based on an English woman who was very much a white woman, but was instead played by a black actor instead. Yeah, it was ridiculous. It's not like Netflix would stop there either, did they? Remember Queen Charlotte as also seen here? Wow, Charlotte sure looked like an English woman on the left there. So, remind me again why they race-swapped her the same way they're doing with Helen and more in the Odyssey. You see, the Odyssey is pulling a serious Netflix-like move on, well, pretty much everybody, and it's not working. Casting someone like Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy is stupid. There's really no two ways about it. It's giving again when Netflix had that other show, if you didn't know, that was called Vikings Valhalla. And when Jarl Istrid Håkon, as seen here, was not only race-swapped, but gender-bent too in that show as well. Look, it's Jarl Håkon. What do you mean he wasn't a black woman? Well, stop being a bigot and just consume it. The reason why I'm bringing up these examples from Netflix in a show about the Odyssey is pretty simple, because it's all the same, isn't it? There's really no difference in what's going on here versus there. It's all being done to replace and destroy the histories and mythologies of specifically white European cultures. I'll just say it how it is, because that is what's happening. There's no other reason to do it. Well, besides the Oscars demands, which I covered in my previous video on the Odyssey, but to catch you up quick there, basically, if you want to be able to be nominated for the Oscars, you have to meet 2 out of 4 requirements from having non-white actors in prominent roles. Your crew working on the movie has to have at least 30% diversity enough, and stuff like the creative teams behind the scenes, those need to have diversity as well. Ironically then, it doesn't feel like diversity, which also annoys me that white people simply existing somehow means that they, by definition, just being there is not diverse, which makes no sense to me at all. How is white people existing not diverse somehow? Look, I'm Serbian. Despite having white skin myself, my people's culture, their language, and their history could not be further from a Greek person's history, language, or culture. Or anybody who's watching who's German, Danish, of Sweden, doesn't matter, even Russia even. All of these places are white countries founded by and cultivated by white people. Yet none of them speak the same language or have the same culture at all, or even the foods. Yet somehow if you put a Serbian, a Russian, a Greek, a Dane, or whoever else in a room together, Italians even, suddenly we're just not diverse because of our skin color. Are we being serious right now? There's probably more diversity amongst those white cultures than most. Not to mention all of the types of people I just mentioned have radically different types of combinations of how they can be born too. You can have brown hair, black hair, blonde hair, red hair, brown eyes, green eyes, blue eyes, hazel, gray, it goes on. Tell me how these people aren't exactly diverse. And why is it only normalized that the idea of white people just existing by proxy somehow means they lack diversity? White people are incredibly diverse, hate to break it to you. And the Greek people by association, they are very diverse too. They have their own cuisines, they have their own mythologies and language, clearly, because Hollywood keeps ripping it off and so do video games. And they deserve to have their stories respected too, but they aren't, are they? Variety also shared End Wokeness's post on this, as you can see there, where they compare Helen and Achilles then versus now. Although, granted, it is not confirmed that Elliot Page is playing Achilles, which I don't personally believe that is who that actor is playing either. In terms of the actual Odyssey, like the story I mean. Achilles is technically dead by the time the story of the Odyssey happens itself. Achilles does show up at one point as a spirit in the underworld when Odysseus is traveling there. Odysseus, by the way, he's being played by Matt Damon, the main character, which means that Achilles will probably, I'm guessing, show up, or should anyways, in Christopher Nolan's story at some point. Now, there's no confirmation that Elliot Page is playing Achilles. IMDb, as you can see there, is theorizing that Elliot Page might be playing Elpenor instead. Elpenor is a part of Odysseus' crew and ends up losing his life after falling off a roof and breaking his neck. Now, if that's who Elliot Page is playing, I mean, maybe, right? We don't know yet since the movie isn't out. An actual nice cameo, however, would be if, like, Brad Pitt returned as Achilles for the short scene when Odysseus goes to the underworld. But as of right now, it's impossible to theorize who exactly is going to be playing Achilles since it hasn't been confirmed yet. Variety, however, tries to paint Elon Musk and really the whole of Twitter as being nothing but racist trolls, as you can see here, where Variety claims that Elon is manipulating his own platform's algorithm to ensure that everybody knows about the Odyssey and the backlash behind it to form a narrative. Or, and this is probably the more likely scenario, is that people are just sick and tired of the globalist nonsense. And the entire Oscar shtick of you needing diversity or no award idea is also stupid as well. One example dredged up by Variety in this hit piece is where Elon Musk responded to Matt Walsh, who, if you don't know, that's a conservative influencer who said this about the Odyssey. We're told that we shouldn't object to Helen of Troy being portrayed as a black woman, and yet if a major Hollywood studio made a film set in Africa and cast a white woman as the most beautiful woman in Africa, those same people would literally riot in the street. And I mean, where is the lie? Look, I'm not crazy about Matt Walsh. I don't really watch the Daily Wire or anything like that, but objectively, what Matt Walsh would say here in this moment, that would be something that would happen. And casting Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy is just wrong. It is a slap in the face for everybody who is not only Greek, but the entire European continent as well. It is taking the mythology, the history, and the origins of an entire continent of people, who are white by the way, and just telling them to shut up and sit down and accept the annihilation of their history or be labeled as bigots. And to that I say, cool, then call me a bigot. I've been called worse anyways by the internet people who hate me already, so piling it on like it's a Chinese buffet at this point. You know, just fill up that plate, let's go, because I don't care about being nice about this at all. This is terrible. The Odyssey has to fail, because it has to be sent as a message that this sort of nonsense cannot be normalized. One user on Twitter, as you can see here, found a possible screenshot of Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy, and the shot is unfocused in the trailer. But they said that they enhanced it with AI, as you can see there, so not 100% official look. But either way, this is as close as we're gonna get to Helen of Troy before the movie officially releases. And you tell me, does Lupita Nyong'o with her dreads and her weird outfit and all that look anything like a Helen of Troy to you? Helen of Troy, as seen here, is depicted to be fair-skinned and nothing at all like what Lupita Nyong'o looks like. She's said to have light-colored hair, and Homer himself describes Helen as white-armed with lovely hair. None of this really translates to what Helen looks like in Nolan's version at all. It's a complete fabrication and lie pushed to ensure that The Odyssey, as a movie, can be nominated for the Oscars, despite itself having no Greek people hired whatsoever for, well, any of the leading roles. Variety also gets angry, showing another screenshot of Elon Musk speaking, where he claims that the Oscars demands diversity in film or there is zero nomination possibilities. Variety tries to claim this is false, where they say this: Musk has also boosted claims that Nolan chose to cast black and trans people to satisfy the Academy's representation and inclusion standards for Oscar eligibility, which were announced back in 2020 and went into full effect starting in 2024. Claims, Variety? Are you being serious here? Because a simple Google search alone would disprove your entire article, you morons. Like, okay, look at this here where Google says this. Yes, movies must meet specific diversity and inclusion criteria to be nominated for the Best Picture Oscar. To be eligible for the Best Picture consideration, films must complete the confidential representation and inclusion standards entry or race form and meet at least two of the following four broad standards. And there are four standards which, yes, two have to be met no matter what to ensure that your movie is then considered. This is absolutely 100% happening because Christopher Nolan wants his Oscars. That is what this is all about. He is willing to throw the entirety of the Greek people's mythology and history into the pits of Hades if it means that he gets his statues on his shelf in his office. The entire discourse surrounding this could be summarized as Hollywood doesn't care about the mythology or history of white European countries, and that is absolutely apparent. What Nolan has done to The Odyssey is equivalent to Netflix doing this to Nelson Mandela, as seen here. Yes, a white guy with blue eyes and blonde hair playing Nelson Mandela. What do you mean this is wrong to do? Have you not tried being a bigot, maybe? I mean, it's a show, movie, whatever. After all, any actor can play whoever as long as they're good, right? But when you look at Helen of Troy's depiction, then Lupita Nyong'o beside it, as you can see there, apparently this is totally fine to do so. so. And actually barely even an issue, because these two, they look the same. I mean, if you say anything otherwise, of course you're going to be fired. Variety also tries to swindle the story in their favor as seen here, where they say that the Oscars demands diversity, and that this is, in Variety's opinion, not necessarily true, which is crazy, because it absolutely is. Variety then tries, as seen there, to use Oppenheimer as the big gotcha, claiming that the cast was mostly white and still won Best Picture for Nolan. However, Variety conveniently throws this gotcha into the fire because they want you to forget that these diversity rules that are in place here now were not actually in full effect to the degree that they are now when Oppenheimer came out and, well, got its awards. Meaning that Oppenheimer was not actually hindered by the same diversity quotas that the Odyssey is, currently facing. However, if Oppenheimer were to be made today in a post-Oscar landscape where diversity quotas do need to be there, like right now, then the cast would absolutely 100% look different and have random people who have no business being in the movie. And Variety knows this, but again, they conveniently omit that information from the article in order to get their gotcha, hoping that their audience who reads them will be stupid and gullible enough to not look further into the industry's demands or their timelines. It is by definition a swindle on Variety's part. They're lying to you. I mean, that's what it is, and they think that you're dumb enough to believe it too. But clearly you're not, because the truth still firmly sits in the hands of Greek people and, well, fans of the story worldwide ultimately always. And again, this entire article tries to use other gotchas in their now infamous Twitter post, which, as I'm writing this, that post has 4.2 million views on it. As you can see here, they try to claim that the same trolls ruined Snow White or Star Wars or Rings of Power too. But it's not really a fair comparison at all. Snow White was ruined because Rachel Zegler is a sociopath and an idiot who didn't understand the story of Snow White or what it meant and used her brazen moronic feminist beliefs to try to shield herself from rightful criticism. Star Wars, well, that's in the pit of nothingness right now because everyone pretty much doesn't care about that IP whatsoever right now. Like, did you even know that a Mandalorian and Grogu movie is coming out soon? Do you see anybody excited or caring about that movie at all? Nobody cares about Star Wars anymore because Disney ruined it. This is the first Star Wars movie in however many years, and again, no one cares. Rings of Power, however, that is a perfect example actually of what's going on with the Odyssey, because Rings, like Odyssey, were created specifically from the mindset of white European men and their surroundings. That cannot be denied. Obviously, Rings of Power is based on Lord of the Rings, as you know, which Tolkien wrote, right? A white British man. This is why Lord of the Rings as a movie and a franchise was overwhelmingly white by design, because Rings represented Tolkien's world and his surroundings, that of a white nation, of British people in their home country, of Britain. This is why the Hobbits, Aragorn, Legolas, really, you name it, they're all white-skinned, because again, Tolkien based his world on that of his country's fables and customs. However, as soon as Tolkien passed, his stories were ripe to be destroyed. Not immediately, but they did get torn apart by the same freaks who are now destroying the Odyssey as well. That's why when something like the Rings of Power all of a sudden is diverse like crazy out of nowhere, why suddenly black elves exist and hobbits that look nothing like they do in even Peter Jackson's original movies even, because all of this is being funneled through the modern audience machine. The same way the Odyssey is as well. Sure, yes, that Homer's epic has a Cyclops in it and other otherworldly beings, and like I said, Odysseus literally goes to the underworld at one point, but at its core, Homer's epic is firmly rooted in the Greek pantheon of history, their way of life, and their mythology, which is Greek, not global. Meaning that everybody who would be in it would be Greek. They would be white. They would not have a black Helen of Troy. Yet when you look at the cast of the Odyssey under Christopher Nolan, which here you go, on screen here, this is who's in the movie, what do you notice about the cast of the Odyssey? You have everything but Greek people starring in their own country's epic. How messed up is that? But you also have Lupita Nyong'o, you have Himesh Patel, and Zendaya of all people as Athena. Are we being serious? Like, why even is Charlize Theron there? She's not Greek either. You even have people like John Leguizamo, who's playing Eumaeus in the Odyssey. That's the same John Leguizamo who infamously said, as seen here, that anybody who supports ICE and all that should not watch his movies, right? The same John Leguizamo who said this in 2023, as seen here, that representation matters and that Latino characters should only be played by Latino actors. Well, isn't that interesting? Well, anyway, here's John Leguizamo in the Odyssey, as you can see, playing his character Eumaeus, or Eurymus, however you say it. Eumaeus, Eurymus, whatever, is definitely not, as you can tell, a Latino character and is also a shepherd in the Odyssey. So tell me, why exactly is John Leguizamo playing a non-Latino character in a story about Greeks within their mythology when he specifically advocated that people should only be allowed to play characters that are tied to their heritage and people? That's kind of hypocritical, isn't it? Yeah, because it is. John saw the money, and suddenly his morals fell out of that window. And now, he's in the Odyssey. Funny how that works, doesn't it? It's rules for everybody else but John. Because yeah, you can't play Latino characters, but John, well, he can play whoever he wants to. Yet we both know if some Latino story got made into a movie in the future and anybody who wasn't Latino was casted as a character who should be, John Leguizamo would lose his mind and start screaming on social media, wouldn't he? It's all a sham, really. It's a bunch of hypocrites, man. And they're being defended by Variety of all places too, who is just lying to you, saying that, oh, none of this matters because of Oppenheimer, while omitting key information against the exact standings that they have. These people, they want to rewrite history and behaviors, and they want every and all depictions of white culture to be systematically erased and replaced by some bizarro version, because apparently white people are not diverse. Remind me again why white people have the most diverse palette in terms of their physiognomy, from different hair colors, eye colors, and more, but white people aren't diverse while everybody else is. Like, enough of this, right? These people are just raging racists who are totally fine with playing the victim only when it complements them and them alone. But when people from a European nation want their culture to look like where they come from, suddenly it's an issue. Well, miss me with that. The Odyssey should have been one of the most universally hyped and exciting movies in a very long time. But now it's all ruined because of all of the stupidity surrounding it. It's not because people hate the story. It's because they lost our trust, man. And it's just horrible, right? Seeing how every single major adaptation continues to get instantly filtered through the same stupid test every single time. You can't have that you need ideological messaging and all the corporate interference and the constant rewriting of these classic stories to satisfy modern institutional expectations that nobody but Hollywood really wants. This is more so about the state of Hollywood than the movie itself. They just want to keep turning everything into another, I guess, industry-like product that always ends up ruining the core messaging, and we're all sick of giving them the benefit of the doubt. As soon as I hear anything European is getting touched by Hollywood, I already know the outcome is going to be nothing European whatsoever, which makes it even more insulting, because Nolan is British, by the way. This guy should know better than this, but he's willing to toss it all away because if it means he gets his rewards, and people are honestly just exhausted, man. Exhausted by constant reinterpretations, exhausted by hearing that every classic story has to be updated or corrected. I mean, it's everywhere, but what this also ties into is fear as well. Fear that even these talented creators like a Christopher Nolan can no longer really fully escape the institutional pressures of something like a modern Hollywood, because audiences increasingly believe the system itself shapes creative output, which it does, by the way. And once people stop trusting the system, which I haven't had faith in years now, by the way, every major project then becomes controversial before release, because that's where we are now culturally. Hollywood did this to themselves. They gaslighted you all into believing that criticism was toxic or concerns over adaptations were just overblown. But instead, all we keep seeing is the same patterns repeat endlessly. Eventually, audiences stop trusting media narratives entirely, and I mean, who can really blame them? That's why now you have viewers that are analyzing every single trailer, every single casting announcement and interview, because people are looking for signs of that ideological filtering or prestige engineering, because it's going to be there. Because that's where we are right now, that the level of distrust like this is at an all-time high. In the end, the greatest stories in human history, they survived for centuries without institutional approval because they really didn't need it, did they? They survived because they connected with people fundamentally, and maybe that's the lesson that modern Hollywood just keeps on forgetting. Audiences don't want stories endlessly filtered through prestige systems and corporate trend chasing. They just want stories that actually feel timeless again, like they used to. And when you have enemies like this ruining everything the way that they are, now is the time to firmly plant your feet in the sand and finally say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We're done with the race swaps. We're done with the ideology nonsense. We are done. If these people won't respect the Odyssey, then we don't have to respect them either. Just throw it all in the fire. The thing that stings the most is that a lot of audiences feel that modern Hollywood increasingly treats the classical European mythology and historical works as raw material that needs to be reinterpreted instead of being preserved. And because the Odyssey is one of the most foundational epics of like all of civilization, really, of any major deviation, whether through casting or like the thematic framing or the modern reinterpretations they keep doing, it all immediately becomes symbolic of a much larger cultural anxiety that we're all feeling. It's just that why does Hollywood seem uncomfortable presenting these classical European stories authentically and unapologetically on their own terms? Why do they need to be changed? That is my question. It's as if everyone else's mythologies and worlds or histories are preserved and treated with respect when it comes to media, but ancient European mythology is often approached through through a modern institutional lens, rather than an historical immersion one, and you call that out, and you're the problem somehow. Sure, maybe the gotcha the usual types will use is that, well, they're adapting Emily Wilson's version of the Odyssey, who took that story and reimagined it with modern language to make it easier to read for many. But what Emily Wilson also did was fundamentally change what the Odyssey was about as well, but Hollywood will likely use that as a scapegoat, won't they? They'll just say, oh well, her version softens the impact and filters the ideas through a modern lens, so we're just going to do that one instead. But that's not really an excuse. That would just be admitting that you're doing this on purpose then, isn't it? It's as if modern Hollywood is afraid to allow classic European culture to stand on its own without their creative input just ruining everything. The backlash surrounding the Odyssey is not happening in isolation. Audiences have spent years watching beloved myths and franchises and historical settings get endlessly reinterpreted through modern institutional frameworks, like I showed you, right? Anne Boleyn, the Viking stuff, and all that stuff too. And now many people no longer trust Hollywood to adapt these foundational Western stories or whatever without trying to reshape them culturally first. Whether that's fair or unfair, that distrust has become deeply embedded in modern entertainment discourse for a reason, like I said. It even happens with superheroes or games or TV shows. Everything has to be diversified, which in itself is a pointless term given what it really does, and just ends up making things that were unique less really, and that's what I hate the most about it. I love seeing stories and more from places outside of the usual sphere, like how so many movies and games and whatever else take place in New York City, you know? So when you get something that's set somewhere else outside of that, it's interesting. It's why I love games like Metro 2033 or Atomic Heart, because you get to experience these games through their Ukrainian and Russian roots, because those areas are not really often explored enough in media in general. And that's kind of how I feel about the Odyssey. It is inherently Greek because it is. Experiencing it as a Greek epic would be amazing, but this is just not a Greek epic anymore. It's just slop being mixed in a blender until it loses what it was meant to be. I mean, Matt Damon isn't even Greek either. Why are there no Greeks in a movie about Greek people? This story survived for as long as it did because it resonated based on what it was all about. Struggles and war and perseverance and mortality. It didn't survive because it was constantly updated. It survived because it was timeless. So this mess is Hollywood's fault. They made this environment themselves. And I think the more foundational cultural-like stories are adapted through a modern lens, the worse we're going to be off as a people. And what this really means is that Hollywood is not interested in allowing timeless European stories to resonate on their own merits. Instead, it has all just had to be molded to fit this new mosaic they're trying to create, and if you ask me, I'm tired of it. Because all it keeps doing is dividing people when it should be bringing us together. But what do you think? Let me know. Thanks for being here. Subscribe if you'd like to. And there should also be a 60-minute segment coming up soon about the Odyssey and Christopher Nolan that's going to go on the air sometime. So I will be checking that out and seeing if there's anything to report there. But for now, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys next time.